Once again, I have returned, and today we are venturing back into the relatively unexplored treasure trove of potentially promising indie games featured in this year's Steam Next Fest. This time we're going to be talking about one of the more prominent contenders on display by the name of Rogue Spirit. Weirdly enough, my first introduction to this game was a handful of articles from quote-unquote game journalists, all seemingly set on comparing this game to Genshin Impact, which obviously sparked my interest, as I really enjoyed certain aspects of Genshin Impact as a game, despite its excessive live service monetization. However, after spending a little less than 2 hours playing through the Rogue Spirit demo, I don't think it would surprise anyone watching this video to hear that the opinions of said game journalists have not even a shred of basis in reality. Only someone who's never actually played Rogue Spirit or watched footage of it being played would be stupid enough to compare two completely different games just because they share a basic anime-esque art style. And while I enjoy taking the piss out of game journalists as a recreational hobby, I'm kicking off this video by debunking that point straight off the bat for a reason. If you're looking for a super casual, relaxed game that requires little to no hardcore skill, which Genshin Impact kind of is, this is not the game for you. Rogue Spirit, to quote the game's official Steam product page, is a roguelite game in which each run offers unique elements that the game balances to offer the most rewarding and fun experience. We tried our best to balance the game in the most satisfactory way, but community feedback would be very valuable in highlighting which aspects of the game require more fine-tuning, or need to be developed more. Also, we do have a few ideas about new classes and skills, but we welcome players' feedback in these areas as well. Off the top of my head, I think one important gameplay aspect that definitely will require more fine-tuning is how the prospect of health recovery either during or following combat instances is non-existent. Whatever health you start with is the only health you'll ever have to work with in the vast majority of instances. There are upgrades that allow you to recover a portion of health by inflicting damage, a vampiric ability if you would, but the health that you actually gain from doing so is inconsequential in the sense that it hardly matters in the slightest. Sure, I just eliminated 2 enemies and I got a whopping total of maybe 4 health back, but what good does that really do you? This doesn't seem very balanced. Even in games like Remnant from the Ashes or the probably over-acclaimed Dark Souls games, you have means of restoring a decent if not generous portion of health without significantly disrupting the overall difficulty or gameplay experience. So for those of you that might otherwise think if you allow the player to heal over time or from health potions, that makes the game too quote-unquote easy, might I redirect you back to those 2 prime examples of gameplay difficulty. The handful of characters I played as were all quite fun to play. Among my favorites was that one woman with the throwing knives that she could instantly summon back into her hand. It was like applying a more visceral version of Captain America's shield. No matter what the angle, I could always recall them, and sometimes it often paid off more so to miss your first few shots, then trap the enemy between the trajectory lines of your different knives. Then recall those knives back for your enemy, resulting in all the knives all stabbing your enemy in the back. Not a very honorable way of dispatching your opponents, but then again, I'm American, not Japanese. Here in America, we don't have to live with honor. Simply possessing undying patriotism and a never-ending desire for ceaseless war and destruction against the rest of the known inhabitable world is good enough for me. I also like that one guy who went around whacking his enemies with a bow staff, or what looked like a bow staff anyway. And there was that one other guy who you could use to hook enemies towards you with a right-click ability, similar to that employed by Roadhog in Overwatch. Instantly hooking your opponent and effectively yanking them towards you for a quick finishing melee strike is always satisfying no matter what game you're playing. In regards to how long the developer intends to keep the game in a state of early access, the developer states, "Our plan is to stay in early access for a total of 7 months. But please take this estimation with a grain of salt, as plans can and might very easily change during the early access period." 7 months is a remarkably short duration for an early access title. Not that you can't transition out of early access within 6 or 7 months, but generally those games that have done so aren't exactly the kinds of games you want to be holding up as examples for the rest of the early access community. As if doubling down on the previous statement, the developer continues, "The early access version of Rogue Spirit offers more or less what we think is going to be 50 to 60% of the final in-game content. Most of the content you'll find is going to be at final quality level, but the fine-tuning of the various playable characters and powers will definitely be different in the final game. Likewise, the game lore and special events will be expanded in the final game, and there will be a proper ending for the story of the namesake spirit. In particular, here's an idea of the differences between early access and final version. Playable characters, 10 in early access, 20 in the final game. Levels, 6 in early access, 10 in the final game. Essences, 30 in early access, at least 45 in the final game, and skills, 16 in early access, and at least 25 in the final game. When asked what is the current state of the early access version, the developer responds, "We are planning to release early access in August 2021. We are currently in the middle of production, and the game has been in production now for about 17 months. I don't really have a lot to say about this one, other than I wish the developer well, and hope the game has a smooth early access launch," which not many games do. As for if the game will be priced differently during and after early access, the developer says, "We are looking into options to reward early adopters of Rogue Spirit. Stay tuned." I really don't like this answer, but given that English seems to be the developer's second language, based on the way they've spelled and structured their Q&A responses, and I genuinely don't mean that as an insult, but just an admission of fact, it's possible they didn't understand the implications of this question and as a result attempted to answer a altogether different question. Either that, or they're actively attempting to avoid answering a fairly straightforward question. The answer definitely comes off as a bit dodgy, but again, I think it's more so the result of bad translation rather than an attempt at dishonest marketing. On that note though, that's where I think I'm going to wrap up the video for today. As usual, if you enjoyed this video or found it informative, please be sure to give this video a like, share it around, and definitely let me know what you think in the comments section down below. I'm always up for some healthy and vigorous debate in my comment section. We don't all have to agree, but as long as we can keep things fairly civil, I'm more than happy. If you want to support the work I do in the channel, subscribing and clicking the bell to opt into getting all notifications would really help. YouTube doesn't make it easy for people to find my videos, and it takes maybe 2 button clicks to subscribe and enable notifications. It's a little effort that can go a long way, plus it'll make you one of the first people to know when a new video has gone live. My goal is to cross over 2,000 subscribers by the end of 2021, and if I meet that number I plan to donate $100 to the Team Trees nonprofit initiative, a group dedicated to reducing our carbon footprint and actively attempting to limit the extent of global warming by repopulating millions of trees in deforested areas. I like the idea of as I grow and hit certain milestones, I give back to the rest of the world. If you want to join me in donating, great, but all I ask really is that you subscribe and help me inch closer to fulfilling my pledge. Either way, thanks for joining me, as always. This is WarriorDan signing out. Stay awesome, everybody. Stay safe, and peace out.